Hey folks, this is Tron Games and welcome to Total War Warhammer 3. Today we're going to do a getting started guide for Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, and this is a Grand Cathay faction. And so we'll start off just kind of checking out the faction itself. So main thing with the Grand Cathay factions is they have a function of yin and yang. But to start with, this faction can recruit alchemists at a much higher rank. You get reduced upkeep for kind of ogre mercenary units that'll spawn. You get increased cargo capacity for your caravans, so you can make more money on the caravans, and your armor for your melee units is all boosted. So that's kind of your general look at the faction, but really the main mechanic is the yin-yang harmony mechanic. So harmony provides a large number of bonuses um, depending on what you're looking at. So if you have things in balance, you get quite a bit of additional bonuses. So balancing yin and yang, especially in the early game, is really important because you can see that it reduces the construction cost, it gives you additional growths, it gives you additional income, reduces corruption, gives you increased control. It just gives you so many benefits. When you do go out of balance, though, you do tend to adjust your kind of penalizes your buildings for the one that's higher. So if you have, you can see right now I'm balanced towards yang, so it reduces the amount of income I get from my yang buildings, but it actually increases the amount of income you get from yin buildings. It also reduces the construction cost for yin buildings. So if you're really like your faction is quite out of balance, you can kind of hopefully throw together some cheap buildings from kind of the opposite side and kind of bring your yin and yang back into balance. So that's kind of the main mechanic. You do want to balance those as much as you can because you can see the bonuses themselves are just so large. So we'll start off here. Put these guys together. Pick a fight with these guys. So here, got a decisive victory. Again, I often will fight these battles randomly or manually to make sure that I typically tend to do a little bit better. I'm going to take some replenishment here because what I want to do is move my way over here, but because I can't get there this turn, what I'm actually going to do is just stay right where I am because I can add some additional units. Now remember, I'm out of balance for yang and I want to get back into balance, which means I need to train more yin. Now, so you can see all of these units have a mark on them. You can see these guys have actually the yang one. You can see it also on the left side. So you can see to check the harmony there. Whereas the peasant archers actually give me yin. So I'm going to build a couple of them because I want to try to balance my yin and yang. And I'm a little bit out, right? So we can come back into here and start to take a look at these different potential buildings. Now, we can increase our capacity for different things. Before we do that, though, we should take a look at the actual Lord, Zhao Ming. So, Zhao Ming has a really kind of important trait here, which is that he has reduced upkeep for melee units. So melee units are significantly cheaper. The problem is that melee units actually give you a lot of the yang harmony. So being really careful and trying to balance that in your overall faction is pretty important. So loading up his army with melee units, you can definitely do that, but you will have problems from your yang yin and yang balance. So if we go through here, you'll have a bunch of different options for things. I typically tend to come into the kind of infrastructure tree and start to take a look at buildings here. So what I want to do is I just want to keep increasing my yin from buildings because as I do more buildings for yin, it means I can basically put more yang units into his army and get him, you know, benefit from that reduced upkeep as well as just take advantage of the increased armor that the faction gets overall. So important to do that. So if we go to the tech tree is pretty kind of pretty limited to start with. I would like to train this one just because I want to get a little bit more yin right off the bat. So I typically take that one. Now, the Grand Cathay factions have a function called the Wuxing Compass, and so you have basically the option to select these different pieces here. So you can get increased replenishment, you can get increased growth, get increased control, and then you can also basically deny corruption and reduce the leadership of enemy armies. I'm going to select this one off the bat, and once you've selected this, you are kind of stuck with it. It's locked in place for 8 turns, and so we can adjust it later, but we are a little bit stuck to start with once you select that. Now, there's one other item, or one other major thing you need to know for the Grand Cathay factions is that you have this function called the Ivory Road, which is that you get to select caravans. And so, caravans basically allow you to dispatch a caravan to different locations, and then you basically get different bonuses depending on whether your caravan actually makes it there. So I'm going to select this one to start with. I want the caravan to go there, but basically the more you put into the cargo, the higher this goes, and you can set the destination. I would like to set it to there, and basically if we make it there, we'll take 1,000 and we'll turn it into 4,000. So that's pretty good. It takes 7 turns to do that. Let's just go ahead and send our caravan to that. Now, you can see it actually, whatever you put into the caravan actually reduces your treasury, so just be aware of that as you're doing those. The more money you put in your caravans, kind of tends to be a little bit more risky, but in the early game, it's not so bad. Now, I tend to upgrade this because the units that you'll get early on are you really want to balance that yin and yang out. So if you can get access to some good ranged units, it's pretty good, but eventually you want to move away from that and get into some slightly better units. So we'll move ahead here just a little bit for now, and then we'll start just having a bit of a discussion about the enemies and kind of an initial plan and things to be aware of in the initial phases of Zhao Ming's campaign, because you do start close to quite a few specific factions that can be pretty dangerous to you, honestly, because you don't have a super strong starting position until you take out a couple of the initial groups that are close to you. So, kind of off to the west here, there's lots of ogre factions. There's actually this faction here has some other sections up a little bit higher too. So they have sections up here which are close to the other Grand Cathay faction, and so we want to move onto this place and take this port. Now, you could fight this battle manually. I'm just gonna continue the siege for now. You want to basically focus at the beginning on getting this section kind of collected. You take these 3 areas to Hanyu Port. You already own this one, and then you want to take Shenwu up here. Now, this one you can see these guys have Skaven close to them. There is actually a Skaven faction in this settlement there to start with. Now, I've brought the Yang down a little bit, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm getting a little bit closer to being in balance. And yeah, you would want to take this settlement next, but let's look a little bit at who is kind of in the area. Just build some of these. I'm not actually going to fight this battle.
In Father's name.
So, in the area, let's take a look at your diplomacy. You have basically the only single faction that you're at war with, which is the Dissenter Lords of Jinshin. They have another area up a little bit higher. that they've got a few more settlements in. So they have one settlement down here, and then they have another 3 up this direction. They typically get crushed by the other Cathay faction. Now, if we look at factions around us, there's this Burning Winds Nomads faction that they start off quite strong. You can actually eventually confederate them, but it does take a while. If we take a look at some of the other factions in the area, this is Miao Ying faction is up there, and so there are a few allies in your area, or potential allies, I guess, in your area. Now you can take these guys pretty early, usually through a confederation. So it's often good to do that because they actually have 6 settlements, and you have a non-aggression pact with them already. So it's good to get things like trade agreements with them. We can start that. That's fine.
Agreed.
And just start to like build your income up, because whether you like it or not, in the area there are several other factions that don't like you particularly very much. There are quite a few ogre factions in the area, so there's ogre factions up in this direction, up in this direction. There's some kind of relatively close to you, and then even further off this way is Greasus. And then there are 2 Skaven factions. It doesn't tell you where they are, but one of them is up here, and the other one is down over here. So the way that I typically tend to start this campaign too, there are actually factions down there too, but the way I tend to start this campaign is I solidify my position in this initial province. So I tend to take these 3 regions, and then if we look at the overall objectives, the main factions that you want to get rid of are these guys, the Dissenter Lords. But then if you take a look at these 3 areas, the Warpstone Stone Desert is up there, the Wastelands are down here, that is the place you are currently trying to take over, and then the Ivory Road is just over to the left. So I tend to work my way to the north and to the west, especially at the beginning, and then that'll get you your short victory. The long victory is quite a bit more interesting, because you want to also defeat the rebel lords of Nanyang. That's up by Miao Ying, and then the Dissenter Lords of Jinshin are right there. The Heralds of the Tempest are quite a bit up to the north here. That's Kolek's faction. They tend to be pretty strong, especially in the early game. The Puppets of Misrule are over to the east. Same with the Blessed Dread. And then Clan Eshin is also kind of lurking around the area to the east as well. So you do have quite a few Skaven factions in the area. So one of the things that can be really good with a Skaven faction in the area is actually pulling your alchemist out of your army and taking it to check out and scout a little bit in the area, so that you don't get ambushed by the Skaven factions. And so other than that, the only thing you really have to be aware of is corruption. You typically start off with some Skaven corruption. You'll go to war with a lot of Chaos factions, so that's something to think about in the long term. We can't really go through all the commandments because we can't take a section, but the commandments for the Grand Cathay faction are quite strong, so make sure that you pay extra close attention to them once you take over a full region. And yeah, that's about all I've got for starting off this campaign. If you like the content, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more in the future. Thanks for watching.